climate change affects our daily lives. It is here to stay. We need to understand it.
As we see it now, the floods, the hurricanes, the droughts, the typhoons, the sea level rise, all seem to be connected, and it is completely impossible to deny climate change as a phenomenon.
Well, I live on an island, and I've lived long enough to see what happened to Hellshire. I've lived long enough to see what has happened to the coastline at Negril. And I'm very aware that sections of Jamaica are going to disappear.
Even though now we are feeling the effects of climate change, in the future it's only estimated to get worse.
The burden of climate change, the burden of inequality in society, the burden of poverty, and the burden of exclusion has been borne disproportionately by women.
The gender roles and responsibilities in most countries are deeply ingrained.
Women are responsible for taking care of the home.
If you have an extreme weather event and you are going to be put out of water or electricity for weeks, and you are the sole adult in your household responsible for the children, I ask you to imagine what it must be like.
Hurricanes or droughts, women have the responsibility, and sometimes it becomes a burden, to look after children, and therefore her own safety and security is a bit compromised if she's the only one responsible for herself and others.
If that woman is a single income earner, then when there is a period of extreme weather, then the small resources that she does have, she has to work magic to continue to take care of the families.
If there is a flood or a hurricane and food is reduced or lost, by and large, women are responsible for feeding the children. So she has a differential role to play.
Because climate change affects food, it affects agriculture, it puts them at a disadvantage in being able to supply food to their family.
If she lives in rural Jamaica and happens also to be a farmer, she then has the additional challenge of taking care of the farm in addition to the household.
We see in the Caribbean where women are becoming more and more involved in the agricultural sector, and because of the impacts of climate change on agriculture and on land, we see that women are becoming more and more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change.
Despite the weather events, despite sometimes even crime, despite several challenges associated with climate change, women are still expected to produce what some people call quality citizens.
Women are placed in a situation where they have to adapt, they have to find ways to deal with the impacts that they're already facing. They need to be empowered to be able to take the decisions in the family to help them get out of that state of vulnerability.
It is very important that there is an understanding that more women live in poverty. Women have less climate resources and resources as a whole. Women hardly own as many bicycles or cars or trucks or four-wheel drive vehicles that could be used to escape a tsunami or a flood.
In traditional society, in the Caribbean specifically, we do live in a situation where the means of production are not equally available to women as they are to men.
Hurricanes or floods, women and children are more likely to drown because women are not swimmers in as large numbers as boys and men. So women are more vulnerable, even just to be alive.
We're really living in a state where women need to be empowered to have the resources that are necessary to deal with the impacts of climate change.
It does mean that if those women's concerns, their gender concerns and their gender needs are not properly and adequately addressed, what we're looking at is intergenerational poverty.
And to correct that, the status of women, the role that women can play, the policies on climate change, an important corrective to the system is to include women in decision making.
It becomes really, really important when you are making policy and when you are crafting public policy to ensure that a gender lens is placed on these policies. And therefore, when we are even collecting data about the impacts of climate change on a population, the data needs to be disaggregated so that we can craft the right solution for the right set of people.
In preparation for adaptation programs, start by knowing very well and understanding the status of women's lives, of their households. You cannot create adaptation programs that make women and their families' lives more difficult after. They should be in a better position to deal with oncoming weather events.
In spite of the vulnerable position that women exist in when it comes to climate change, they are strong.
Women, when they emerge as decision makers, make a marked step change contribution to decisions that affect people.
Women in the Caribbean come together. They lead community groups in vulnerable areas in their country to deal with the effects of climate change. It provides strength not just for themselves, but for the areas that they live in.
Similarly, in climate change decision making, when women are in control in critically large numbers, we see the emphasis placed on the social issues, again, of housing, of choice, of refugees, of food and food security, in a way that doesn't happen if women are absent.
In Trinidad and Tobago, as we recently faced a serious flood, the flood that was recorded to be the worst flood that we've faced in the past 50 years, women came out in full force to help deal with cleanup actions, to help deal with providing assistance to flood victims. And this is one way that women are showing resilience when it comes to dealing with the impacts after they have happened.
We, women of the world, have a right to be at the table and are emerging more and more at the table. We campaigned for 1.5 to stay alive. We could not settle for a 2-degree global average temperature worldwide, because while it will be 2 degrees, let's say in parts of the United States or parts of Norway, it will be 3 and 4 degrees in parts of Africa, parts of the Pacific, parts of the Caribbean, if there were no strict and rigid commitments to lowering the temperature.
Women hold up half of the world, so how can you not be concerned about women? The patriarchy is alive and well, but we have to chip away at it. And in particular, help younger women and their families understand that it does not have to be this way.
The fires in Russia, the fires in California, the floods in Cambodia, in Thailand, in the Philippines, the floods in Trinidad and Tobago, the hurricanes in the Pacific, they're all connected in my view by this heating up of the environment.
So in the future, we will see young people having limited access to land, limited access to agriculture, to be able to be food secure, to have access to biodiversity, to have access to jobs. It affects every aspect of our economy and our society. So because of that, young people are at a disadvantage when it comes to the effects of climate change.
And it is an injustice to allow people to suffer when we know what is causing it and all of us can take action.
The environment is more than just the place that we live in. It's more than just our surroundings. It is our provider. It's what we survive on. It helps us to thrive. The state of the environment in which we live, it really determines our quality of life. So I just want to encourage young people to look for how you can apply your skills and just do what you can, because every little small action counts. If each of us do what we can, it just adds up to so much more.